Hi, my name is Teddy, and I'm software engineer turned entrepreneur. So I'm running a little software consulting firm, helping non-technical co-founders mainly. Is what we do, and a bunch of other little businesses aside, which we can talk about later, maybe in the podcast.
This episode is brought to you by WHU, the Otto Beisheim School of Management. WHU is reshaping the way students learn about business, management, finance, and entrepreneurship through its innovative programs and partnerships in Germany and across the globe. To learn more about this globally ranked university, visit whu.edu today.
Hey folks, Gerrit here. In this episode, we introduce Teddy Pejoski, entrepreneur, engineer, and guru at bridging the technical, non-technical divide. He's the founder of Crack Your Screen, an app with over 20 million downloads, the software studio GSIX, a code academy, an engineer placement and recruiting platform, and a game-changing no-code technology called Enzyme. Teddy's entrepreneurial journey is like a movie in the making. From selling flowers in rural Macedonia to building innovative technologies the world over. Why? Because he's one of those unique breeds that thinks like an entrepreneur, but has the technical chops to build almost anything. So for you folks who want to dive into the mind of an engineer who knows the complexities of working with non-technical founders, this episode is for you. Hope you enjoy it.
Coming to you from WHU on the banks of the Rhine River in beautiful Vallendar, Germany. This is the best and most awesome founder podcast. A show about entrepreneurs, innovators, advisors, and educators, and the stories that make them who they are today.
Well, Teddy Pejoski, welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here, Gerrit.
Teddy, thanks for being on the show. I'm actually really excited to have you. As you know, a topic that is near and dear to my heart is helping founders, particularly founders without technical skill sets, build technology companies. I myself have been one of those people and learned the hard way what not to do in many cases, but went through a collection of experiences where turned over a lot of staff. I probably made dozens more angry, threw away $500,000 worth of technology, which was one heck of a conversation to have with my investors, and learned all of my mistakes through the failing by doing process. So this is a topic that's really interesting to me. And as we're at a business school here at WHU, that has a lot of great business minds, but not a lot of technical capacities, I thought this would be a really great conversation for them to hear a little bit about the engineering side and some of the challenges that they might have along the way.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me. I think I can provide a lot of insights based on what we did in the past, because actually that's what we do. We help co-founders with non-technical background overcoming those challenges that we basically see every day. And as much as it's easy for us to understand or build stuff, it's super hard for them to tell us what they expect or what they want to do. So I think we've seen a lot in the past 10 years maybe, working with non-technical people.
Awesome. Well, before we get to that, I think it'll be nice to learn a little bit about you and what it is that you do. As we've known each other now for 5 years, I believe.
5, I guess, yeah.
I know a little bit of this story already, so I can kind of preface it a bit, but because I think that was the first conversation you and I ever had. So maybe you can start by sharing a little bit of your entrepreneurial journey and kind of how you got started as both an engineer and an entrepreneur, and kind of tell us how you got from day one to where you are today.
Well, I don't know what comes first, whether it's the engineering part or the entrepreneurship part. I've been involved with like computer science, engineering, programming from really like super early age, about 12, 13 years old when I started basically programming. But prior to that, I did a little bit of entrepreneurship. Even I wasn't really aware that that's how we call that thing. But my parents couldn't afford to buy me a computer, so I would spend days in internet cafes back then, and kind of fixing computers around and helping other people, chatting, setting their PCs up. And I figured that I need computer. I love that, but they couldn't afford to buy me one. So I started figuring out ways to how I can make more money. Lucky thing is probably that my parents are both entrepreneurs. They've been running their businesses for like the past 30 years. So I kind of learned a bit from both of them. And I started selling flowers when I was around 11, 12 years old. And with the money I got from like the flowers, I made enough so I can buy myself a computer. Basically, that was one of my happiest days when I was really young. And everything started back then. What I used to do, I would go to these popular IRC channels, and I would basically talk to people and engage in communities about programming and basically various topics, but programming was the one thing that was really interesting to me. And then the city, I'm coming from little town in North Macedonia. It's there are not that many people, and there are not that many people that you can talk to about programming. So I needed to, spend time again in internet cafes and download free books or just Google search. Actually, it wasn't Google back then, maybe Yahoo or something like that. And yeah, I started getting into that even more. Now, fast forward to that was my high school time, and then fast forward to my university days is where I really got into programming and trying to see the big picture and what's the power of programming and what I can do basically with using those tools and programming languages. I kind of created a little network of people together with actually four other people who are my partners basically today. We started doing little websites, after that mobile apps, and that became what now GSIX is basically. The company name is GSIX, and we're the four founders. And there's a lot in between, but that's basically my journey, like a little bit more about the beginning and then slowly moving to what we are and where we stand today.
Nice. It's not uncommon when I talk to founders that many of them had entrepreneurial parents as well. Somehow the lessons or the DNA somehow, I don't know if it gets passed down genetically as much or that there's just a different risk profile that's learned of children from entrepreneurs. Maybe some of them are turned off by the struggle that comes along with it, and others are turned on by the freedom or the flexibility. You kind of mentioned that your main driver for kind of engaging in entrepreneurial activities was that you wanted to buy a computer and you wanted to get into computer science. Would you say at that time you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur for various reasons, or were you just focused on this goal of getting this new tool that you could explore?
Yeah, I don't think I was aware that I want to become something, far away from entrepreneur or even programmer. I didn't know how things work. I just knew that was the thing back then that got me excited, and that I can feel powerful by just, being able to connect to people outside my town. I kind of felt the power there. So yeah, I don't know if I was aware. Actually, there's this story. My mom is also teaching business in high school, and then I don't know, I don't remember how old I was back then, but she asked me, like, not what you want to be when you grow up. It was rather, do you want to be an entrepreneur? And that was the first time I hear about that word. And I was like, I don't know what that is. If you can, tell me, explain what it means to be an entrepreneur. But she was explaining, she explained to me basically by the book, what the book says an entrepreneur is someone who's taking risks and then the reward is big. But you need to be you have to do all these roles, different roles, so you can be perceived as entrepreneur. And it sounded to me like a crazy idea and something that I wouldn't want to do in the future. It was like, probably not. That's not for me. I'm gonna be a programmer probably. So I wasn't really aware.
Right. Cool. So you said, you got a computer that got you really deep into the interest on the topic. You went to university where you ended up meeting your eventual co-founders of GSIX, your software consulting firm. Can you talk a little bit about, how that business came to be and what some of the catalysts were that took you from being a student to actually running a real revenue generating business?
I mean, it's where do I start? So back then we were just excited by building things. So we were like a bunch of young kids with some computer skills, and we were there's this tool that's missing. It would be nice if we have this tool, and we would just talk about ideas and we would just start and build them actually. And that was it. There wasn't any money involved in the formula. We weren't looking for that. We were just passionate. If someone was like, "Hey guys, this is a good job that you did," we were like super excited about that. And that's what we've been doing for like the first 2 years. We built little website here for the region where we post news or where we gonna I don't know. We started like URL shortening tool, which at that time there were a bunch of URL shortening tools, but we felt like, we can do this in like a couple days. Let's try it. Let's do like a Macedonian URL shortening tool and those kind of things. We were basically like working overnight hacking stuff, and that was the main drive. Yeah. Cool.
I'm gonna prime this conversation a little bit because I know a story that I really want you to tell.
Okay.
You guys built a mobile app that had a pretty strong degree of success and led to some outcomes, if I understand correctly. Would you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, I mean, when at the beginning we were doing a bunch of websites, and we were looking for new exciting technologies. And around 2009, that's when the mobile thing started really, and we were again exploring, excited about what we can do on mobile, although the devices weren't powerful back then. So we started creating little apps for basically games or prank apps, things like that. And because the market wasn't really saturated at that time, we could get easily to like 10,000 downloads. And then once you have that number, it's a quite big number, 10,000 downloads. So you're getting more excited, and it's pushing you more to do more. I didn't know exactly when, but we came up with this idea of basically having your phone and then put like a fake crack screen on top of all the application. That became Crack Your Screen, and that's really one of like our biggest success stories. And I think it's still one of the most downloaded app from this region, basically. To date, it was installed on over 20 million phones. It was crazy back then. We didn't know how this market works, basically, because you submit the app, there are downloads coming from everywhere, and you don't know what to do with them. We learned how to monetize it by putting little ads in there, but that wasn't really planned, or it wasn't really with like having like a goal with that. It was just pure fun, but it ended up being good success for us. Then we applied to a challenge organized by Samsung back in 2011-12, and we actually won the first place there. And that was really massive. We got some cash from them as well, and that helped us, or that actually put us in a situation where we need to think what we're gonna do next, but this time we need to plan things ahead, because we have this money now, we have this popularity, we have these users. We need to do. We need to think what we're gonna do. So I think that that was probably the primary drive of like starting the company, actually. And then we were recognized by the community, and many people who read the story about Samsung and Crack Your Screen approached us. They were asking for like building mobile apps for them, helping them with whatever software they had, because that's like the perception. If you are a software engineer, you know how to fix everything. And yeah, that's how we got our first clients.
Wow. I mean, 20 million downloads, kind of doing it accidentally. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this going, shit. That's pretty amazing. What's also interesting about it is, you know, you were doing this as a hacker or a computer programmer. You weren't building that really thinking about that it would become some kind of business or even have the widespread success that it had. Was there a learning curve to be able to take this growing user base and growing download base and figure out how to monetize it?
Definitely. I think one of the best learning experiences, not just in our case, but it's like learning by doing, you know. And with Crack Your Screen, although it was accidental, we learned so many things, and we learned those things really fast because things were happening that fast. You know, you're just getting 2 million downloads overnight, and you don't know how to what to do with those numbers. So like we figure out how to integrate advertising, little ads in the app by just the need of having them in the app, because we can then monetize the app. But not just that, these are little things, technical things. Apart from that, we also learned how to, which is really thing that got us where we are right now, is how you need to communicate with your users, how you need to communicate with your customers, how to think through productize, not the technology. Because we were 4-5 people back then, with all of us with engineering background, no practical business background, no marketing knowledge, nothing, just like hardcore programmers. That was it. And this product skill that we learned, I think it's really one of like the most beneficial and the skill that got us really here today. So yeah, there's a lot of learning there.
Awesome. That's such a phenomenal story, Teddy. Really, just amazing. So you went through this process, you built this app, you won the Samsung challenge, you got a little bit of money, and all of a sudden people started reaching out to you looking for support in building apps for them, which was the catalyst of GSIX, your company. Yeah. I want to give you a little bit of an opportunity to kind of, I say loosely, pitch GSIX, but tell me a little bit about what you guys do now, you know, maybe what makes you different, and if you feel like sharing a little bit about your approach or some of the clients or stories you choose to share. We'd love to hear a little bit more about what it is you do now.
Yeah, so I think when we started, the idea was that we have this crack your screen app, and we can keep building apps like this. But then when the popularity hit, basically when people were asking about different problems that they have with mobile or web or whatever software they were building, we saw the opportunity, because now we have this experience, we have this huge user base, and we can help those people. So we saw the opportunity there, and we started basically doing services for them, helping them get to like grow their user base or figure out how they need to basically structure their app in terms of like UI UX. And large portion of what we do today is around that area, helping people get on the market really fast, build their like initial version, their MVP. They can get traction, they can get users, they can get feedback, and then based on that feedback, we would help them figure out the next steps. GSIX is software development / consulting firm, but sometimes the solution is not technical. Sometimes it's just pointing out to like when there's feedback from the users, that doesn't necessarily have to mean that you need to implement like some new feature, but you need to change what you have like in your existing app, for example. And I think that's really what differentiates us from companies in the space, because we really know, or maybe we don't know, but we have the experience to tell whether something is good or bad, judging on users' feedback. And that's really what, like, that's really a key differentiator. Apart from that, apart from helping these people kick off and get out on the market as fast as possible, we are also, I mean, we've been working with like large scale organizations also, famous like Fortune 500 companies, basically, where we would integrate big solutions. They're not necessarily little tweaks here and there, in contrast to like non-technical co-founders. So I would say right now we have like one pillar, helping startups, helping non-technical co-founders. The second one, you come to us with like specification, you're a big corporation, you have your budget in place, you have all the procedures in place, you share with us these requirements, and we're able to do it. That's the second part. Less exciting, definitely. Working with startups is like more exciting, and then the value that you're giving to those people and the learning that you can get from there is really important. We do a bunch of innovative products here in the office, trying to solve our daily problems basically with our own solutions. Yeah, that's basically it.
Well, it's interesting that, you know, you've got a pillar that's focusing on startups, oftentimes people that don't have technical skills that are looking for those capacities. Then you've got your established companies that are looking for specific features or technical problem solving. And then you've got your own entrepreneurial initiatives in-house that you're building.
Yep.
So the spirit of crack your screen is still alive in GSIX.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the part of our culture, actually. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good segue where I'm going to tell a little story, and I don't do this very often on the podcast because I really want to focus my attention on you. But I think this is a good segue for me to share a little bit how we met, because okay. I think it helps explain a little bit about GSIX and maybe kind of segues into the next part I want to talk about, which is working with non-technical entrepreneurs. Because as you know, I was a non-technical founder myself, actually multiple times. I'm still non-technical, but just incrementally and slowly learning a little bit more along the way to at least speak the language. It's such a struggle for a non-technical founder to know how to work effectively with engineers. Oftentimes our expectations are skewed. We don't know what to ask for. We have unrealistic timelines, and we can frustrate the hell out of you guys. So the little story I have to share is, I guess it was 5 years ago now, and I was at the University of St. Gallen helping to set up the startup lab there. And in the meantime, I was mentoring a ton of startups, including some venture-backed startups that have really grown since then. And in the process, one of the things that I learned was that software development in Switzerland is expensive. And that can be quite cost prohibitive for an early stage venture, especially a pre-revenue venture or even a pre-capitalization venture. So I found myself on a random weekend looking around Europe for a place where I could build a network of engineers and software developers. And wasn't sure how I was going to do that. So I went on a website, I think it was Odesk at the time, maybe before it became Elance, and started firing out direct messages all over Eastern Europe. And in one night, sitting in a hotel room in the Allgäu, I probably fired out about 30 emails, 30 messages on Odesk. When I woke up the next morning, I had, I think, 8 or 9 emails back, and these were sent out to the Ukraine and to Romania and to Macedonia and a number of other countries. And I believe 6 of the 8 that I got back came from Macedonia, from Skopje. So I said, well, I guess this might be the place I find developers. And within 10 minutes of responding to the emails, I booked a 20 euro flight on Wizz Air to Skopje. Actually had to look on the map where Macedonia was, and I consider myself pretty geographically sound, but maybe Macedonia is one of the more obscure countries in Europe. Sorry, now North Macedonia, if I want to be politically correct, for, at least to the Greek people that are listening. But I booked a flight to Skopje and organized a bunch of meetings, and found myself in a cafe in the center of Skopje meeting you and one of your co-founders. And, you know, I'd met a bunch of folks in Macedonia, and really what stood out with you guys was, you know, one of the first things we talked about is your role as entrepreneurs as well as software developers. You told me the crack your screen story. Pretty sure I almost fell out of my chair when I heard that. And yeah, 5 years later, here we are. And I know we've had a pretty great relationship in terms of, I think, you know, I've introduced you to some clients. You've certainly helped me with some technical challenges. So I kind of know firsthand, you know, what your capabilities are, and what, in my mind at least, differentiates you from some of the offshore companies I worked at with my startups in India and the Philippines, and some of the kind of complexities of, you know, when you work with companies in other countries, oftentimes they're expecting requirements, and they're literally looking at the requirements and writing code and not thinking so much about the business itself, how customers will use it, the user experience, usability, but overall having that kind of entrepreneurial mind, thinking of things through the lens of a business person as well as a technical person. So that's just a little story about how we got here, because I think it's kind of cool. But
cool. Thanks for sharing that.
What I want to talk about a little bit is this idea that I was just picking up on there of developers with entrepreneurial minds. In your perspective, are they rare? Are they really unicorns? And are they hard to find? And how do you, as the CEO of a software company, help to kind of embed that DNA? Is it through recruitment? Is it through your corporate culture? You know, and maybe you can just talk a little bit about that lack of entrepreneurial minds. And the reason I'm asking this is there's so much talk about non-technical entrepreneurs, right? That there are all these great business minds that can raise capital, that are great at strategy or marketing or finance or whatever it might be, that don't have technical skills. But flipping that on its head, there's also a lot of brilliant technical minds that don't have entrepreneurial skills. So maybe you could share a little bit about your thoughts and experience with that.
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, they're rare. That's for sure. Usually, as you just explained, they're like great technical talent, but then when it comes to the business side of things and a bunch of other, like 1,000 other things, when it comes to doing your own thing, it's basically you can't find people like that. It's super hard, and that's been really. We were fortunate enough to kind of develop that skill over time, because we weren't like that. As I mentioned before, we were like 4 or 5 super geeky people. But over the years, we learned one of the things that's not necessarily only in this case. It's not true in this case only, but it's general truth. You need to listen more than you talk. You need to be in a position to understand what the other side is saying. And with engineers, it's hard to work with engineers, and that's not just my opinion. It's like opinion from millions of people that I heard before, because as you said, they either expect to have ready to go specification, they can see it and code it, but it's also the ego, the perception of I'm an engineer, I have the power to do anything, which is true to a certain extent, but then that doesn't mean that you understand the business, and you have to project that on other aspects, you know. So learning that, figuring that out, that's how the world works, gave us really strong position in the market. But yeah, it's definitely rare. Although lately there are tools that enable people to build stuff without that much of technical expertise. So you would see more of business people, non-technical people with some sort of basic skills, like putting up a WordPress site, getting Google Sheet, and there are a bunch of tools for that. And actually, we are working on something in that space now. So you will see more of these people, but less engineers with understanding the business, unfortunately. Or maybe it's good for us, I guess. So yeah.
It's an interesting point that you make, and it's one that I talk about here at WHU quite a bit with both with founders and students and whatnot. Is that there are a lot of tools now to be able to build simple apps. I've kind of taught myself how to use WordPress, and I've built some transactive apps on my own, and it's not so difficult with a little bit of commitment and effort to do that. However, I would argue at least that if you say 15 years ago, that wasn't really a good option, right? Like if you wanted to build a simple e-commerce marketplace, oftentimes you were building it from scratch. Then there was the era of, WordPress and Wix and these types of sites that, are almost kind of plug and play functionality. But as we're moving into this new era, where, some would argue simple e-commerce marketplaces are starting to get pretty saturated. I'm sure there's still some niches out there that are yet to be targeted, but in many ways, we're moving into an era of deep tech where we've got, AI and machine learning. The blockchain is becoming more ubiquitous, and there's all sorts of technologies that probably require more than the non-technical founder's ability to put something together with some really simple tools. And in my mind, that means the engineers are once again back in the driver's seat eventually at this point. Now, eventually that might change again, right? As AI develops and computers are going to be able to build their own software themselves, things might change again. what do you think about that? Do you think it is now becoming an era of deeper tech, and it's getting harder again for the non-technical folks to build high growth startups?
I mean, this is a really huge topic, and a topic that really interests me lately. And I think I have a lot of information to share, but I would try to keep it short. AI and software building itself and all these things, that's all fine. I don't think it's going to happen soon, but definitely these tools will enable people with like non-technical background to build stuff faster and get out on the market soon. But then we should look at what's the goal when someone wants to build something. They want to get traction, they want to show it to users, they want to start eventually a business, convert that into a business. And from that perspective, using all these existing tools out there, like a little WordPress site that can help you get to that, it's completely fine. I mean, all these big companies, they like Groupon, for example, started with simple WordPress site. It worked out for them. And then when it comes to like growing that team, then you can build it from scratch, or you can, keep building on top of what you have, depending what's the technology that this thing is built on. But it's an era of deep tech, but there is also place for everyone in the game right now, because non-technical people can build tools using what we as a technical people build. And on the other hand, there is enough opportunity for engineers to work on those tools, because someone needs to maintain those tools. Although there is, like, for example, a project that we're working on right now, it requires a lot of technical know-how, of things in terms of like infrastructure, databases, all this hardcore stuff. And we are doing all that just to make it easier for a non-technical person to build a website in a minute, for example. So then you would see multiple websites being built, and multiple of them will fail. Some of them will be successful, but there will be work for the engineers, because we have to keep maintaining to maintain basically this infrastructure. So yeah, my point is it's called low code or no code trend right now, using all these tools. It will be like, back in the day, people were, using cards. That's how they programmed the computers, by printed cards, or then they would use like low-level programming languages. And now we have these modern languages, but it's going even further with these tools. So you can look at them as next generation of basically programming languages. That are not programming languages, but rather tools. And basically, you're building your software as like a building blocks from pulling stuff from different services. But someone has to maintain that. So there's work for both sides.
Right. So like the idea of something like WordPress or Squarespace, it's super easy to use for the user, and they can build applications off it, but there's still a role for thousands of engineers to be able to maintain that, improve the feature sets, improve the reliability and functionality of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about going a little bit deeper into this idea of non-technical entrepreneurs, non-technical founders. I know you've worked with many of them, me being one of them. And maybe you can share a little bit about some of the struggles or pitfalls of working with non-technical entrepreneurs, some of the experiences that you've had, kind of outlining some of the challenges a little bit, and maybe what you do to manage those challenges, in that you as an engineer, them as an entrepreneur, speaking different languages, and maybe not having realistic expectations of one another.
Yeah, speaking different language in terms of the technical language is definitely the challenge. One of the biggest challenges is setting up expectations. As for, I mean, that's like for everything, but setting up the right expectations, because non-technical person would think that little feature could be like. I mean, could be like, this is a small feature and it will take you, I don't know, 2 hours worth of work, where the background of that feature is like more week worth of work. And that's been really challenging to make those non-technical people understand what's really involved. And I think we did a pretty great job in explaining that, like literally taking people by hand and explaining them, this is how this thing works, showing them the code, like trying to, I did a lot of coding in front of those people so they can understand what's involved there, so they can know what to expect. And that's been really a big challenge, but you need to have patience. That's really important, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who you're building this thing for them. You're solving the problem for them so they can solve it for other people. And you need to always think about the end goal. So if the end goal is that they will produce something, it will be successful and it will bring you more work and you'll become more successful, then you need to be patient with them and basically do that thing that I did, like walking through everything and trying to be as valuable as possible, and in the same time maybe teaching them a little bit our side, because when you work with someone, I'm saying that engineers there's no profession like engineer, but you're taking different hats at different time. When you do like a medical software, you need to understand a little bit of medicine. When you do like, I don't know, e-commerce, you need to understand how the e-commerce works. But in the same time, the user on the other side, the non-technical person, needs to probably understand a little bit about the technology so you can set the expectations. Now, again, we are talking about startups and non-technical people. This is different when you work with big companies, when they just have the specification and that's it.
Right. Well, it's interesting one of the things that I picked up on that you said was that sometimes you will actually sit down with your client and code so they can see the amount of effort that it might take to to do just what seems like a small effort for them. You can show them that it's actually a complex and time-consuming undertaking. So this idea of creating transparency is obviously such a big component, but that leads me to ask maybe one of the more fundamental questions about that, which is, not only do you speak a different language, you have way different technical capabilities, you're tasked with executing on someone else's vision that can't do it themselves. And then on top of it, oftentimes you're on the other side of the planet from them in another country. I imagine there are some challenges, if not obstacles, to building relationships of trust.
Yeah. I mean, we're going back to the communication, which is really essential part of everything, and also in our business. And the communication has been a challenge multiple times, because first different expectations, but then different time zones, for example, where you are not able to respond at certain period of the day because the guys are already out of office and something went wrong with whatever thing, although it might not be technical stuff, it might be, I don't know, AWS went down, that's not our fault, but still you have the responsibility to respond. But again, if you set these things up front, and we made so many mistakes because we didn't know what could go wrong back then. Now we don't know everything, but we know a large portion of it, so we kind of make the clients aware that this might happen, and we are working until, I don't know, 9 p.m. But after that, we will respond in like that range of time. You're just making sure they know what you know, so you're aligned on the expectations, and that's properly communicated. That's really important, because sometimes you may do something for them. You may even go a step further than what's being discussed or required, but if you don't communicate that properly, it's like it's not done. And we've been in so many situations like someone junior would do something, they're not communicating it. It just creates like a wall that's nothing is going on, where in fact people are working. So the communication has been a big challenge there as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Having good, healthy dialogue is the best way to start building those relationships and trust. I want to get a little bit deeper into this subject in terms maybe of process. One of the things that you mentioned is when you work with a big established firm, oftentimes you'll get a clear documentation of requirements, and you go through those requirements and you provide an output. Now, if you're working with a non-technical founder, most likely they not only don't have those requirements, but they're not sure what they want yet. So I kind of want to provide a scenario a little bit. I'm a non-technical guy, which I am, and I've got a new business idea. I got a problem I want to solve. I've got the idea of some type of app that I want to build, and I know basically what I want it to do. How do I come to you? What do you do to translate this vision and just some basic objectives that I have for a technology? How do you go from what's in my head into something that I can start using on my screen?
So what I'm trying to do, and that's lately, and that's what I learned, is I'm positioning myself as a user of that thing first, and certainly the product experience that we were talking about before helps a lot. But I'm also positioning as a partner in that journey, because I know that if we build something for you, and if that thing works out, which is good for you and for us, we have to work on this for a really long time. So I'm trying to position myself as a partner to understand what is it that you really want to do, because oftentimes it's not the thing that you're saying that you want to build, but it's completely something else. People would talk about. Let me think of this recent example. There was one person, so they wanted to build an app to scan barcodes, and they can use those barcodes and the information that the barcode will give you to basically convert some points into money. And this is basically what this guy told me. So you don't understand anything, and I was like, I don't get the idea. What's the idea? How are you going to have those barcodes? You need to have them somewhere stored. It was completely chaotic output out directly from his head. And I was trying to think through the eyes of the user, how I'm going to use this app, what it means. So I was kind of creating scenarios. I'm taking the phone, I'm scanning the barcode, but wait, where is this information going then? How is this being evaluated? So I started asking those questions to that person. And slowly we came to some conclusion that it's not really about the barcode. It's about some database of cards that are existing somewhere with some value. And then they were looking for a way to convert that value into something meaningful, either cash or either using it to pay for other stuff. It was completely different setup. So again, I'm walking in like the user's shoes and as a founder's shoes, and trying to really position myself as a partner there and understand. And usually, and more often than not, you will come to me with some idea, and I'm challenging people to write these things down, and I'm going to do user stories out of them. Like the typical user story would be, I as a user, as a visitor, I can create an account on the website, and then I can look at my profile. Or I as a user can click buy, and then I can get this product ready. So I'm creating those stories, but I'm challenging the founders on the other hand to do this exercise. And what happens is they will come with a big list of all the ideal things that they want to have. And I'm like immediately cutting half of that basically, because I know it's nonsense. And I'm just focusing on the really important aspects of what's the value proposition your value proposition for your clients. Yeah, that's that's how I work right now.
Cool. Cool. I mean, I think that's really interesting. The idea of defining user stories is a great way to kind of articulate what those kind of primary functionalities that are happening on the site. So you've helped kind of extract these stories out of the client's head, get it down on paper or digitally, kind of prioritize those that are most important. So now you got a list of stories. What happens next? Where do you go next in the process?
So the really important piece is that we're on the same page in terms of these are the stories, read them well and think them through, and then let's revisit them again. And so we are not starting the work until we are on the same page in terms of, because those stories afterwards will be the blueprint for evaluating whether we delivered, whether the expectations are met and everything. So we have to set those things up first. And from there, I mean, there are multiple directions. Sometimes it involves design. That's been really a big piece of what we're doing, which is trying to figure out the user experience first, build the user experience first, because people is less likely they will understand the code, although I'm sitting and coding with them, but it's more likely they will understand when they see something. So seeing the design, figuring out how the layout should look like, again, based on those stories, so it kind of comes together, the stories, the layout, and then we start building from there. Yeah.
Cool. I can imagine there are a lot of things that you wish your non-technical clients knew before coming to work with you, or knew as the process was unfolding. So I just kind of want to pick your brain and get a little bit of advice for those non-technical founders out there that are getting ready to launch a technology company. Maybe you could share a few of your kind of top suggestions of what these entrepreneurs should be focusing on in preparation to go work with a software developer.
I would say first you need to try to understand what you're trying to build, and try to minimize the information that you're going to provide to the developers, which translates to, if you do this exercise, if you try to minimize this information, you're kind of optimizing all these features that you have in your head. You're optimizing that and creating, again, one little story. And when you tell that story, it will be easier to build on top of it because it's only one, basically figuring out your value proposition. The other part is, I think the trust is a really important thing. When you go and talk to someone, you want to build something, they won't stole your idea. They won't screw you or anything, because they're also looking to make money out of that as much as they are going to help you, but they're running a business. In this case, we're running a business, so it's not in our it's not our plan at all to screw someone up, because if you are coming to us with a problem, you have to trust us, and then we have to trust you, and that's how we build this relationship that I was talking before. And then the other thing is, if you want to build something, although it's your idea, that's fine, but idea sucks. There's a lot more than that to there's execution, there are all sorts of things. It's different topic, but you have to understand that although it's your idea, let us give you what we think about that idea, because it might be good, but then some things are not possible technically, or it's not doable in 1 week, or the point is you don't know everything, although it's your idea. So you have to let us be creative in that area. Maybe the button is not green, it's blue because we said it should be blue, because we know from experience that the blue color will get you users instead of the red color or things like that. So just try to be more like on a listening side. The same thing that I'm doing when I'm talking to non-technical people. Try to listen more.
This idea of mutual learning. Yeah. You touched on something that I think is such a good point. And it's something that I hear from inexperienced founders, usually first-time founders that haven't been down the road yet, which is, oh, should I tell people my idea? Like, especially software developers, because they're going to steal it, right? My idea is so great that if I tell people they have the technical skills, they're just going to build it themselves, and then I'm going to be screwed. And, I don't know how many times I like roll my eyes and tell people, come on, dude. Like, I think you said it perfectly, which is your idea sucks, because ideas are a dime a dozen. And you guys as engineers have your own ideas. Other entrepreneurs have their own ideas, and ideas don't mean anything without execution. And if the idea is the right one for you to build, then nobody should be able to do it better than you anyways. And if you're committed to doing it, you already have a head start in front of everybody else. So,
that's so true.
The one other piece I wanted to ask you about this is just getting into the nuts and bolts a little bit of non-technical founders. What often happens is, I can use an example here. There's a startup conference coming up called the Idea Lab. It's VHU's like one of their biggest events, and they do a startup pitch. And usually these are early stage ideas, and they do the startup pitch competition, and then the winning firm gets $10,000 and I think 75,000 worth of other services and whatnot. And there's a bunch of business angels in the room or whatnot. So just think of this scenario. I'm a young founder. I've got an idea. I'm pre-product, pre-revenue, and I've partnered with my guys, and I've got 30,000 euros in the bank, and I've got this idea for a really big app that most likely is going to cost a lot more than that. What happens? I come to you, I've got this big idea, but I've got a small budget. How do you manage that kind of situation?
This goes back to the drawing board, the user stories, where because usually people don't talk about their budget. They have their budget in mind, so they will come to us. And it's surprising because their expectations is, this can be done in 1 week, where in reality it can be done in, 3 months. What I'm trying to do is talk less about the budget and figure out really what I'm thinking is the great value for short time, less cost. That's the first step, figuring out, understanding what you want to build, trying to make you aware that you might be wrong, and then trying to give you basically the option to choose between, you do this super fast, super cost effective, go on the market, get users, or you want to do the traditional way, but then it's pretty much you on your own, because it's like less percent, it will work out that way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, the old lean startup approach is build something and get feedback from the market as quickly as possible.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of young entrepreneurs struggle with, is this idea of scope creep, right? They want they think every function is absolutely important and key to their business model, which kind of comes to the topic of MVPs, right? The minimal viable product. And I think everyone in school or that reads or learns about entrepreneurship learns about this idea of what is an MVP. Do you oftentimes get in that kind of conversation with your clients saying, all right, all of these requirements are, there's this long list of user stories, and, what's the MVP here? What do you want to build first, and how do you pare that down?
Yeah, that's exactly what we do, defining the MVP and basically the getting one value proposition, creating that one value proposition. But what happens oftentimes is that uh, people people mis- people are making mistakes when they think about MVP. MVP is not the first version of your software, because usually they will come with list of things, or we will work together on a list of things. So in the end, we'll end up having bigger list which has 4 different value props. Where that's first version of your solution. It's not an MVP. MVP is getting only one thing and getting it out in 2 weeks and getting feedback there. And that's also again another challenge, trying to make people understand that we are not locking ourselves for 3 months and building your first version, because maybe you don't have the budget, you don't have the understanding, or it's just not how it works. So trust us a bit.
Interesting. Yeah. I want to ask one more question. I've asked this to a lot of the other founders that have been on this podcast, which is the idea of founder teams. I do a lot of work with accelerator programs, and oftentimes, actually, we were at Techstars earlier in the year, and David Brown, one of the founders, said his first 3 criteria in judging a business are team, team, and team. And, again, here we are at a university that doesn't have a lot of technical skill sets. You've worked with a lot of founder teams that don't have technical skill sets. On a personal level, maybe not the GSIX mission, but what do you think about founder teams? Do you think we're at a time that founder teams can get away with not having a technical co-founder, or do you find the companies that do have a really big advantage over the ones that don't?
Yeah, companies definitely have bigger advantage when they have technical person on board, and that's been proven through multiple examples in the work we do. We've been working with companies with 0 technical people, even in later stages, and it's getting harder and harder once they grow. Once there are different challenges, it's not building the MVP, it's scaling your business. Then they see the challenge. But versus on the other hand, we had companies, they have at least one person who understands, or it's maybe more involved in that, and these companies are massively successful and way more ahead than the others. So definitely having someone is really important. I mean, at the beginning, you can build your MVP, you can go out with like the tools that we talked about, like build a WordPress site, go out there, figure out if there's product market fit, and once you're certain about that, you can have someone technical. But the earlier this technical person is part of the team is better, definitely, because then they have the sense of ownership and they understand the business, they may suggest something else. So I think it's definitely important.
Yeah, I kind of get the same sense. I'm wondering if there's there's plan A and plan C, that maybe there's a plan B in there as well, which would be, how do you think about startup teams that maybe don't have an engineer on their team? They're often hard to find in a lot of cases, but someone that has knowledge of product management. Do you notice that if there's someone that has the ability to kind of manage a product development process, which is definitely more common in a business school than finding an engineer, do you find that having someone managing the project, or at least translating the business requirements into semi-technical user stories, does that make things easier in terms of the communication and trust?
To a certain point, yes, because it's this person could speak the language, it will be easier, someone will do this job, but it's not helping on the long run, because what's going to happen is this person will become overwhelmed with eventually becoming like CPO or something, like taking care of the product in the future, and then the know-how will be left to whatever engineering team you have somewhere else. That's some parts of the work can be done somewhere else, but you need to have this person inside who will deeply understand the core business. So you can maybe change teams in the future, scale faster, at the beginning it might be helpful, but not on the long run. And then the analogy is you're working on like a medical product, but you have no medical person there. You might heard of I don't know, medical devices. You might use one, but you're not a medical person, so you can't really build something in that industry. At some point, you will have to engage this person. There are famous examples of people starting airline companies like, I don't know, Richard Branson or GSIX. In their case, they were non-technical, technical meaning not having any clue about the airspace industry. But my assumption is that today these companies are big. Actually, the other one got acquired, but at some point they needed to hire these technical people. And with engineering and with what we do right now, it's super important, and you need to have this person as early as possible. So
right. Yeah, that idea of domain expertise, obviously, it can be really valuable, and that goes for the non-technical folks too. Like you said, that led me to want to ask one other question, which is using G6 as an example. Now, since you guys kind of specialize in helping, these non-technical entrepreneurs build their MVPs and early iterations of their products, I assume many of them are building them to get proof of concept, maybe to get to their next stage of capitalization and growth, with the intent to eventually bring development and engineering in-house. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of challenges or how you maybe mitigate those challenges in transitioning from being an external service provider to those companies taking the technology in-house? Are there some difficulties with that, or ways that you manage that process?
I mean, in our experience and all of our clients, we weren't really in a position to transition what we did to internal team, because people usually they stay with us. Either their business dies for some other reasons, or if they keep growing, they're with us. So I can't really talk how this transition might go, but I can talk on the other side, how we inherited some pieces of work from other development teams. And that's, again, challenge for itself, because then you have different technology stacks, different understanding. You need to basically spend some time learning about the business, which is not little kid now, it's grown-up man, and you need to, it has certain requirements, certain rules. We're trying to make this transition as smooth as possible. Sometimes it works. Oftentimes there are various challenges here and there, but it can be done. But my point is that people don't do that anymore, because how it works today is you have different teams in different places. So maybe your core business is one team, and you have, again, assuming that you have one technical person can coordinate the work, then you have some other team in charge of some other product, and it's getting more flexible. It's like embracing remote work and all these popular things today, but that's how it works. It's not like, because if you hire someone on board, then the cost increases depending where you are in the world. But working with US clients, it's I don't know, it might be 3-5x depending on the expertise. So people don't do that.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I could dig in deeper because of my own PTSD from building apps and building technology in the past. But just to be cognizant of your time, I know it's the end of your day. I want to pose a couple questions that I ask all of the people that are on the podcast, just to dig a little bit more into Teddy, the human being, rather than Teddy, the entrepreneur. So first question I want to ask you is, what book are you reading right now? What's on your bedside table?
Well, right now I'm not really reading anything, but the latest one that I read, and it's literally sitting next to my bed table, and I read it for I guess third time now. It's Hard Things About Hard Things, Ben Horowitz.
Nice. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite books. There's so much learning in there, and I intend to read that again.
It's almost biblical in the way that you're reading it, man. The other question I want to ask you, what's on your playlist? What are you listening to?
I can open up Spotify and see what's like the where I see that. Okay, like songs. So the first one is 50s Japan, Jesse James. That's the name of the song. It's really good instrumental piece.
Nice.
But yeah, other than that, I'm a hip hop guy.
You're a hip hop guy.
Hip hop, yeah. And when I work, a little bit of jazz/classical music sometimes.
I think I recall when one of the times where you came to Colorado, you found yourself at Red Rocks at was it a Snoop Dogg show?
Snoop Dogg and Be Real, yeah.
That's a good American experience right there. Good Colorado experience too. But man, Teddy Pejoski, my friend, dude, thank you so much for taking the time and kind of sharing your story and providing our audience a little insights on what it's like to build software, and particularly as non-technical folks. I think it was really illuminating, and it'll spark a lot of thinking around with it among our audience. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Gerrit. It's been a real pleasure. And you reminded me actually of some like older memories that I haven't really talked about. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll have to do that next time. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Well, folks, that was Teddy Pejoski, founder of G6, Codepreneurs, Enzyme, and much more. To learn more about Teddy's work, go to g6.me. That's GSIX.me. Or find him on Twitter at @_Teddy. Next up, we'll be kicking off Season 3 of the Most Awesome Founder podcast with some really fun changes. We'll be highlighting some hot topics in the world of tech, introducing some of the most inspiring female founders we know, and sharing stories of some of Germany's coolest non-tech startups. We'd also like to welcome our new producer and editor, Mr. Paul Apple. So be sure to check out our website, mostawesomepodcast.com, follow our channel on YouTube, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast streaming service. We'll see you in a few weeks. Bis nächstes Mal.